All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So thanks for joining us, everybody. My name is Aaron Kennedy. I'm with Cognition360, and I'm in the ATL, Atlanta, where Braves fever is hot. It's actually kind of cold outside, but and rainy. But that's what everybody's talking about. Don't tell anybody, but I'm not a Braves fan. But we can move on from that because my team's not in it anymore. But I've got two other people with me. I've got Kyle from Sierra Pacific. Welcome, Kyle.
Thanks for guys having me.
Kyle comes to us from California, the great state of California.
Big
Um,
state. Where my team never stood a chance to make it to the World Series.
and then we've got Christy Perez from Little Big Town of Nashville. Say hey, Christy.
Hey, nice to be with all of you today. Thanks for joining us.
So what we're going to talk about today is we're not going to be able to crack this obviously in 20, 30 minutes or so, but talking about what are the KPIs that you want to be really focused on, especially heading into IT Nation season. And even if you're not going to IT Nation, obviously this is a good time to visit those things and just take a moment to sit back and what can I do to work on the business? Where should I even start? Those kind of things. So with that, do we want to kind of start out in agreement profitability? And we kind of start there. That's usually where most owners tend to gravitate towards is, hey, am I making money? Where am I losing money? Those type of things. So Kyle, can you speak on that just a little bit?
Yeah, it's a fantastic place to start because, I've done executive coaching for owner operators of MSPs for a while now. And whenever I'm helping them do a restructure or an understanding of their business, right, when we do these seats and we talk about accountability and we build out their vision for the organization, the part that always gets hung up on the most is building out scorecards and where people are accountable. And one of the biggest things that we spend so much time on, and I think it's because of where a lot of us are bred as engineers or as technical minded people, is we make the idea of running our business sometimes more complicated than it truly is. Right? At the end of the day, a business is ran through revenue, costs, which get you your profitability. So after running both of my MSPs, it was I kind of created this mantra that at the end of the day, there's only two ways you make more profitability or right margin inside of a managed services, and it's simple: it's charge more or do less.
Mm-hmm.
It was always a very simple way to say, hey, how am I being successful and how can I improve it? And if you start to simplify these ideas, it creates the ability from an executive or a leadership level to wrap your hands around how do I start to make improvements? Because there's a lot packed into charging more or doing less, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can get into those micro details, microcosmics, but at a high level, as you scale and as you are an owner, right, we got to keep it simple. We got to keep the vision very, very high level. We don't want to get buried in the weeds.
So what do you say to that owner who's out there right now and saying, look, I'm making good money and look, I just bought a boat, so I'm doing great. Why do I need to be so concerned about my tech centering time or how profitable each one of those are? Of course, most people feel like they need to know that kind of thing, but it takes some time and focus and being intentional about it.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, I've met many MSPs where from a revenue perspective, right, they're not the largest, right? There might be in that $2 to $5 million range, but the owner is making a pretty substantial income. But on the flip side, right, if you're looking to be a business owner where you're growing an organization and have a culture where you are providing jobs to people to where they can have obviously a good source of a salary and life work balance, right? We're not nonprofit companies for the most part, right? I've known some MSPs that are nonprofits. We're not here to talk to you guys today, but really from the high level, right? We're for-profit businesses and we have clients. Those clients have a termination lifespan. So I always got to be making sure I'm getting clients in the door. And when they're coming in the door, that they have a good experience and they really work pretty easily throughout the lifespan of their 12, 24, 36, 60-month agreements. So I think high level, it comes into a culture and really being a good business owner rather than just using it as a way to do, right, some take home income.
So I'm going to pick at that a little bit more. So let's say, because I'm sure not 100% of these MSPs out here, 100% of their clients are fully managed, that kind of thing. They have time and materials type clients, that kind of thing. Of course, that's kind of a different beast, right? Because you're not focused at that point on service delivery and efficiency and that kind of stuff. In theory, the worse you are, the more money you make, right? So service delivery efficiency doesn't even enter the equation at that point. How do you talk to people about that? Just briefly about, I've still got 10%, 20% of my clients that are T&M. Does this stuff even apply at that point?
It's a fantastic question. And I think the biggest thing is it's the maturity of the leadership team or those owner operators, because you cannot manage both of those streams of revenue you can't manage them the same way. And the way that I always had a perspective, where I coach my perspectives, is you really have to think of them as separate businesses, almost little micro businesses within your organization. And trust me, I know for years we've heard, right, everyone say T&M is bad and right, we need to have managed services, but I know plenty of MSPs where they have a very healthy managed service offering, but also a very lucrative professional services offering. For example, at my MSP, we had some projects that we could push forward where, right, we're quoting out, I hate to say it, and I'll be honest, $500,000 to $1 million projects. That's good pro service revenue. But I had to treat it as a different organization, right? A different company, different teams, different accountability and KPIs in order to say, are they doing good or are they doing bad? I couldn't it's not a sweeping easy button of everyone's responsible for agreement gross profitability. Well, what happens when they don't have an agreement? And you get into the conversation of not all revenue is good revenue. And from a very generalistic perspective, that's where managed services, back when I started back in 2008, 2009, became so incentivizing, because it was a lot easier stream of revenue that I could control through further efficiencies.
Right. Okay. I don't want to harp on that too much. We could talk on that forever.
Yeah. That's a whole different conversation for another day.
So let's talk about those metrics specifically and which ones we should be looking at. Christy, if you could pull up our agreement profitability report and just we could start navigating through that. And we don't really have a set, like, here's exactly the KPIs that I'm going to tell you, because there's different ones to look for in different scenarios. But of course, there's, some top KPIs that you need to definitely be focused on.
And if you don't mind, Aaron, actually, I want to kind of give a high level perspective of where you kind of start into that drill down of why these reports are so important. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. So real quick, Christy, I'm going to steal the share. I know we're playing share roulette. And of course, my computer is doing I need permission. But at the end of the day, right, if we put on our CFO hats, and I know that's a foreign one for some of us here, especially who have maybe, our MSP is maybe the first time I've gone into this foray. And I don't think it's going to let me share. I apologize. So I'm going to go ahead and find a way to close out of this. Is the idea of, right, if you talk to a CFO and they're deep diving your books, they're going to look at the P&L, right? To say, is my business doing well or not well? And most of the time, a mature MSP, right, if we use the OML scale, right, even between 3, 4, and 5, you're going to be able to look at your lines of revenue by some type of class or GL mapping, which will allow us to understand how much managed services do I have, and then me being able to deduce what is my gross profitability of that managed services offering, right? That's all the above the line type stuff. And for most of us, right, especially in our early years of running a managed service provider, the gross profitability is enough. It's allowing me to know that, hey, after COGS, after revenue, I'm able to have a healthy take home. Now, what ends up being lost is that sometimes we hit a spot where maybe we want to improve gross profitability. And right, that mindset of charge more or do less kicks in. And if we just hyper focus on the P&L, then what ends up happening is we just always charge more because we're not, or right, we start to go, okay, do we have too much salary, right? You're not able, you're thinking very high level, and your operators or your managed service managers or whatever you call them, the people that are in charge of managed services, they are unable to say what maybe from an efficiency perspective is holding us back. Now, back in 2007, 2008, when ConnectWise Manage really started to get big, the thing that was super enticing about it, it was the only tool that allowed me to handle some of my invoicing and also apply things like labor to it, right, through time logs and tickets, so that I could actually see profitability by client. And ConnectWise had something called the Agreement Gross Profitability Report and the Financial Dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is really where I think, obviously, where Cognition360 and Christy has some beautiful reports to show us, is extremely powerful, because I don't know about any of you that are on this call that have, and maybe you can leave in the comments, have tried to look at the financial dashboard, but it leaves a lot to make you go, hey, well, what if? So, right, if we want to talk very high level KPI wise, right, the very first one we can start with is that agreement gross margin or agreement gross profitability number, client by client, and as far as your operators, right, your total agreement gross profitability.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it gives us that insight into that gross profit that's
Right,
so important. So, and Christy, I think you can, and I apologize, you can get back that report. And I don't know if anyone's kind of in the comment section right now. One of the biggest frustrations I always had, and this is back when I ran my MSP, was agreement gross profitability and the financial dashboard only gave me so much to understand my client lifespan. Right. 1 month, my client might be unprofitable. The next month, they're super profitable. And if I want to see what the average is, I got to do some complex math in Excel to say, hey, are we doing a good job on them?
Because you can only see 1 month at a time.
You can only see 1 month at a time. And that was so frustrating because my MSP, we actually had a 60-day onboarding process where I would actually dump anywhere between 50 and 100 hours per client to do an onboarding, just because I wanted that experience for the client where I could set an expectation that, hey, I'm going to do as much bump in the road as I can over the first 60 days, Mr. and Mrs. Client. After that, it's smooth sailing because I've tripped over every cord and stepped on every landmine that I could.
Mm-hmm.
So it was so pivotal for me to look at a 3-month span, a 6-month span, a 1-year span, a 3-year span, to say what was the average over the life of the client.
Right. Yep.
So what Christy, and I think you can...
Yeah, so basically with Cognition360, we're going to look at, we're going to be able to look at all your agreements, in a holistic manner over that time period that Kyle was talking about. So this first summary page, this is going to show all your agreements. I'm going to sort here just to kind of show you just our main managed services agreements. Again, this is sample data, so some of the percentages might be off a little bit. So right now, if I'm just looking at my managed service data, I can see here how much I billed, what my overall margin, what my overall effective rate, and also what that overall contribution rate is across all of my agreements. Contribution rate being it's going to take in also that salary information from your fully burdened salary rate to then show you truly what you're getting dollar for dollar on those agreements. Mm-hmm. Over here on this side, it's going to give you those trend lines. You can also drill down, and this is going to give you kind of all the different clients under that particular agreement. You could then drill in. Yep. Yeah, customer with customer, you can drill in, see all of their information. Now, this is just a good way to kind of start to see overall, how are we doing across the board? But the question I always get is, as a business owner, where do I need to put my focus? How do I know what clients am I making money on, what clients where am I losing money? Mm-hmm. One of the best places I feel like to start is with this margin overview. This way you're able to put in and see with the color-coded chart up here, we want everybody to be kind of in this blue-gray area up here. You want to look for these pinks in your chart. So if you see that you're in a blue area doing really well, but if you start seeing that you're going down in any particular place, that is where you would want to kind of drill in and see what's going on with that particular agreement. Sometimes it might be like on this particular one, they were doing really well, and then you can see here they went down, then they did go back up. The main thing you're going to want to watch is, are they not going back up? Did they take on 20 new clients and somehow you missed it, especially as you get bigger and might miss that information.
Mm-hmm. And Christy, I think that's so important to touch on there for a second. Because I think that is where in this conversation, right, of like, hey, right, in managed services, I win some, I lose some, is that we have to be able to, going back to the KPI topic, have a way to not just be able to report on the KPI, but be able to way to manage these KPIs because of an accountability aspect to where, right, the question I get asked all the time is, Kyle, what should my agreement margin be on managed services? What is the magic percentage? Tell
Yeah.
me what the magic
Or what is
number
the magic effective rate? Like
Exactly. What
what
is the magic
effective rate,
effective rate?
what should I look for,
Exactly. And at the end of the day, I think that's a whole larger discussion, maybe for another day, on agreement types and how to orchestrate your agreement margin. And feel free to email me if you have questions on that topic.
Well, we got that question in the chat actually. So this is looking at it based on agreement types. So
Yeah.
the question in the chat is, how many types should I have per customer? I guess the question is kind of how do you layer those types? How do you line up those types with lines of business, that kind of thing?
So that's a great question. And I think that's something where you'll get kind of a few different answers. I'm not a big fan of the word best practice, just because there's many ways to do things good, and best practice only gets you 60% of the way there. But at the end of the day, I think it comes from an owner and accountability perspective of, one, what are you trying to hold people accountable for? And I think the agreement type, what's important to know about this entire conversation as a baseline knowledge share, is that agreement margin that we're talking about, and it's the way Cognition360 calculates it based off of ConnectWise data, is it really turns out to the agreement that is invoiced out of that agreement. So whatever is being invoiced is what creates the revenue portion. So if you are trying to tackle managed services, and this is the perspective I always took, then why would I put SaaS revenue? Why would I put backup revenue? Why would I put T&M revenue in that agreement type? Because it's just going to influence those percentages in a way that I am not accounting for. So when it comes to that question, again, going full circle of what percentage should I be looking for? Well, right, if you ask me, what did I hold my team accountable for? My agreement types always had just managed services as the agreement type. So only revenue for managed services. That way I could tell my service managers, you must have 65% for agreement margin for the managed services agreement type. Because I then, and if I wanted to bundle it, right, the way I would look at it is, if I have SaaS and managed services, right, SaaS we all know is like 16 to 20%. That's a very easy margin number to give because it's always fixed based off of distribution. Right, then I do 16 plus 65 divided by 2 to figure out the average between the two. To me, it made it too complex, right? I wanted to keep things simple. So, right, a lot of times, especially at Sierra Pacific Group, what we do commonly is we will break it out between your main GL codes as far as what your classes are for the lines of revenue that you're trying to manage. And I think this kind of dovetails a little bit, Aaron, with the question about professional services. Right, and managing them as separate businesses. I always looked at, yes, while we had cross-sell, upsell, and bundling, I wanted to manage my SaaS business, my procurement business, my professional services business, to where I could do P&L by class and also be able to do the financial dashboard. And God, I wish we had Cognition360 back then, so that we could manage those appropriately.
Right.
So
right.
I can say this agreement type means this much margin.
Yeah.
This agreement means that much margin.
Yeah, I think you're right, Kyle. I think, if you have your main parent agreement, a lot of people will separate their agreements. You'll have your main, parent agreement, and then the different child agreements underneath it. I also think that's a good way to do it. Then if you have your agreement type, like let's say you have an Office 365 agreement type, you're able with this product, you could just pick, just show me my Office 365, because that, your margin for that's probably going to be, 16, 20% or something like that. So you don't want it to affect that overall managed services agreement. Now, with your managed services agreement, one thing that you do want to note is to figure out how to get what your true profit is. In this report that I'm showing you here, this is going to break it down for you, looking at by month. So for instance, with this particular client, you've billed out, 20,000. Here's your additions cost. This hard cost right here, the only thing that we want in there is hard cost to run that agreement. So, your tools to run that agreement, your vendor costs to run the agreement, the anti-spam, the antivirus. If that's all in there correctly, and then you have your fully burdened labor in there correctly as well, we're going to be able to pull in what your true labor cost is on that particular agreement, no matter who's working on it, to then give you what your true profit is.
So real quick, Christy, I want to interject right here, because I want to emphasize how important that is. This is why timesheets, and one of the sessions that at Sierra Pacific we spend on so much and help you rewrite the processes, is because this is where timesheets and member billing costs are so important. And I want this to kind of settle in with everybody, because that is, as managed service providers, the number one cost that we all have.
Yep.
So I need to be able to see that level of output, AKA cost, for each agreement based off of accurate and consistent timesheets. And I know that that is always a thorn in the side of a lot of managed service providers, but honestly, it's a non-negotiable. And
it really has to be. It has to be non-negotiable. If you don't know where that time's going, if I've worked with a lot of clients through Cognition360 where, in the beginning we start working with them and their engineers are only tracking time being put onto an agreement or put into a client. So then they're showing that they're 60% billable or 50% billable. They can say they're busy, but if you don't have all full 8 hours accounted for every single day to see where that lost time is going, are you getting death by meeting? Are you getting too much mentoring time going on? You don't know if you need to hire if you don't have all of that time going in.
You're preaching to the choir right now. And that's why at my MSP, right before things like Cognition360 existed, I was always, you have to have multiple KPIs to manage people accordingly. I always try to keep it to 3 to 5 per person. That's part of my executive coaching methodology. Yep. And you have to have things like gross profit and agreement profitability, because the one thing that needs to be managed are COGS and expenses.
Yeah.
Right.
Whenever I start looking, I start working with, I'll talk to the CEOs and they're like, well, I want to see, what clients I'm losing money on. I'm like, that's important. But the first thing we need to do is we need to look at your utilization. And that's key number one. You have to look at utilization first. And then from utilization, you move to efficiency. And then from efficiency, you look at those numbers and you fix those first. Your agreement profitability will fix itself, or at least let you see which clients you are making money on, which ones you might need to get rid of, which ones you might need to increase.
Well, and because if you don't do that, you'll run into an MSP I'm working with right now where their managed service pricing is so high because they have yet to find a way to manage efficiencies. So what you end up doing is a bottom-up pricing strategy where you take your current inefficiencies and then stack your margin on top of it, rather than using your pricing down to say what the efficiencies are supposed to be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Another thing to point out that I see a lot is in your additions costs. One thing to kind of check on, if you're looking to see, do I have my agreement set up right to get true profitability out, is this additions cost needs to be tools only. There needs to be no labor cost set up in here. A lot of times I'll see faux labor come over. I even see sometimes because of, if you're using Cell and you've got, labor calculated in there to, for commissions reasons, and you pull it into your agreement. And if you don't take out that cost, what's going to happen in your reporting is you're going to basically double it, or and it's going to bring your margin down. So, one thing to note is, do you have those agreements set up right to be able to see what your percentage of margin or even effective rates are?
So Christy, we're getting close to the half-hour mark, and I want to leave one of my best practices. Again, I hate the word, but I think everyone should be doing this. So I guess it's egotistical. But anywho, and I want to give a chance for some Q&A here, is one thing that I instated that worked really well, and I've had a lot of MSPs instate, is once you're confident about the accuracy of your financial dashboard or your Cognition360 reports, is to do a top 5, bottom 5 meeting every third of the month, fourth of the month, fifth of the month, whenever you're confident your books and timesheets are closed, to have either the account managers and the operators, or the owners and the service managers, whoever are the teams that are accountable for agreement profitability, to do a top 5, bottom 5, to look at your top 5 profitable clients and your top 5 least profitable clients.
Yeah, we have reporting for that. It's pretty amazing. We've got reporting, so you can go in if it's set up right, and if you've got all your rates in correctly, we can actually show you very fast from a rank standpoint and also from a percentage standpoint. Like, do you have any whales? I've actually seen clients that are up here in like 30-40% on some of their top clients. So, it could be a threat, to lose those clients. So you really want to see this number really spread out. So
much judgment calls by this, right? I had clients that I'm working with right now where he has 2 clients that are 92% profitable. We worked a lot to make his data accurate. And he ended up being able to do a QBR with that client and take him out to dinner because we found out that the client was thinking about firing them because they hadn't reached out to him in 2 months.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, or you find the other one where you have the old pricing or the buddy pricing that you signed for a client 4 years ago.
We all love the
right?
friends.
The 4 years ago, they've helped me grow my business. Well, at the same time, now can tell you and show you data where for the last 6 months, you've actually paid them to be your client.
Right. Yeah. That's
Which if they're giving you referrals, sometimes that could be okay, I guess. But,
right. And maybe you can add that as a stream of revenue somehow.
Yeah.
But that's just important to have that meeting.
It is important.
Conversate. Don't look at all of your clients because it's just going to be too overwhelming. And if it's top 3, bottom 3 in the beginning,
and that's a great kind of, I would love to show, as a business owner, you don't have time to look at all your clients. Another cool thing about reporting is we do have, target thresholds. So we're going to kind of give you a target hour. If I want to hit a 50% margin, I can't go over a target threshold, target hour. So then you could set this report at 100, show me clients that are at 100%, or show me the ones that are at 75% of their target. And now instead of focusing on 150 agreements, I'm only having to focus on 15. And then you could subscribe to this and have it sent to you, and then reach out to your service manager and say, hey, what is going on with Brian Taylor? They're at 130%. Or they could actually drill through into their tickets and labor right there. And you can actually see why they're going. They've got one ticket up here with 20 hours on it.
And how much you want to bet that? How much you want to bet that 20-hour ticket is something that you should have billed the client for?
Right. I see a lot of, I do see a lot when I see those large tickets, I see a spike in a certain month, and I'm like, let's drill into that ticket and see what it is. And so many times it's like workstation setup, and they're covering them under the agreements instead of treating them like a separate project. Because we all know today, workstation setups, some of them can be so complicated. So it's a way for an owner to only have to look at those kind of outside anomalies of do we have an agreement that's not going to hit a 50% margin this month? Let me get in here and try to fix it before it's too late, because at the end of the month, it's too late. It's too late to fix it at that point.
We had a question asked by Michael Barrett. And I think it was about the whole conversation you had, Christy, with the addition cost, where he said, this tells me that you are not loading all costs in the labor cost, which includes other things other than labor for them. And normally they would use addition costs for the rest. So I think where he's trying to get at is, what do you do with all those extra cogs and all of those extra functions that they require for managed services?
So like, is it talking, do you think he's, you might could answer this for us, but is he referring to like account management costs or service manager costs, those kind of costs?
Yeah, not direct labor.
Yeah, overhead. And I think he's talking about the expenses, and I think that's really indicative of understanding your business.
Yeah.
And are those an expense, like the cost of doing business, or is it a cog? So for example, things to me like account management or sales reps, sometimes even service managers, and that one is up for debate a little bit. I say that hesitantly. To me, that's where I would manage it by the P&L. There's a budget that you should be having, right? The 4s and 5s of the world understand the reason OML 4 and 5 is so hard to achieve is because of budgeting. You should be managing your budgeting to those numbers for account management, sales, marketing, all those other overheads. Not
it's hard to put every single cost into there. What I recommend is just your main tools or vendor costs on that agreement.
It's your cost of doing managed services, because sometimes account managers might be helping out with a pro service client.
And I did have a client that was like, hey, I want to put my account manager cost in here. It's a service. And, according to SLI, they say it is a service. So if you are a larger MSP and you have account managers that they have a book of business, this is who they're working on, you could take their salaries and divide them out and put in a cost under addition to include that cost in, but it's not going to be perfect, because you might have one client that's taken up 30% of that account manager's time. So it's really not a perfect number, but it is a way to get it in. But I think Kyle's right there. When it comes to those types of costs to actually run a business, sometimes you have to do it from that P&L side.
Right. Just being mindful of the time here. So we'll take, we've got actually several more Q&As that we'll stick around. I do want to go ahead and launch this. If you're interested in doing a trial or talking to Christy more about Cognition360, these are just some of those reports that we've got there. go ahead and just fill that out. I'll leave that up for just a few seconds. But yeah, this is definitely one of those topics you could probably talk about for 5 hours.
Yeah,
And
I
there's just
think I do
so
this over
much there.
normally. I usually
Right.
do this over like 6 months and 12-hour sessions or something
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah.
Like this is just
Not
one
in
of those
25
topics that's
minutes.
so dense. Yeah, it's not 25 minutes. And I also should point out that Aaron, you and I will be going more in depth from one step back, which is talking about how do I create a structure or an org chart or an accountability chart to
Yep.
support this type of accountability, to say
Mhm.
you own managed service margin and agreement profitability. So we're going to be talking a lot about that at IT Nation. It's Thursday at 4 o'clock, I believe. You can find us in
Yep.
the speaker list. But we'll be going in depth for a full hour, and we'll also be at IT Nation. So if you want to meet up and have coffee
Yeah.
or have me buy you a beer, go ahead and you guys, you'll get my contact info somehow. It's just Kyle at Sierra Pacific Group, and we'll go ahead and we can have some little one-offs if anyone's interested.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be there as well. Love to meet any of you. Come up, say hi to us in the booth. And I'm sure we'll be around at the bars and stuff later on as well. Would love to meet as many of you as possible, answer any questions that you have. I think, Aaron, we're planning on doing demos at the booth, I believe. So,
Yeah, we'll be doing some of those. Yep.
so if you want to see more on cognition, you can definitely come by and see that as well.
Yep.
And Mike Heaton, I 100% agree with you. Understanding the differences of gross margin, net income, net operating income, that business 101 is so critical to scaling your MSP, because some things just can't be measured in ConnectWise. Some things have to be measured in ConnectWise,
Mhm.
right? And that's understanding your business models and why some things are done in some systems and not, right? It's like engineering.
Yeah.
Sometimes you use a tool for different things.
So Kyle's obviously a wealth of knowledge there. If you're interested in talking more with the folks at Sierra Pacific, I threw that in the chat as well. Tons to go through with your business. A lot of people have questions. Where should I start? Is probably the biggest one that I always hear. I see a lot of problems, but how do I even attack this mountain? But
I've
definitely,
got 12 years of bad ConnectWise data. How do I clean it up? And my engineers don't want to put time in. Yeah,
Yep.
it's the fun stuff where we'd be more than happy to help anybody out with that.
Christy, so I'm going to keep going into the Q&A. So if you could pull
Sure.
up that month by month agreement report, the one with all the colors on it. The question we have is
The pretty margin one. Yeah.
how can I tell when my agreement profitability dips?
Okay. So basically, when you see what it dips, like you're going to look for colors. Like a good one here, like I can see here, this is staying in the blue gray area, and then we had a dip, it went down. You could then drill, like I said, into that ticket and labor information to try to figure out, what was that dip from? So I can see here, your the actual hours, 93 hours versus the normal, 30, 40, 50 that went into that particular agreement. You could then, kind of drill into just that labor, look at it to see, what caused those dips. Is another good way. This margin report here, so it depends on how you're looking at it. If you're looking at it from a margin, or if you're looking at it from an effective rate as well. This is going to give you kind of that SLI information to let you see, that top and bottom effective rate. Great account management report, because you can say, hey, I want, all of these above 150, for instance. So I want to get in there and
Pause right there just a
see.
second. So Kyle, in your top 5, bottom 5, is that effective rate, agreement gross profit, agreement gross margin? Where should you start there?
I personally always start with the percentage, because we all have clients that are big and small. So if you try to use dollar or an effective rate or last year's pricing, it's difficult to comprehend. So the only true way to stack them side by side is by utilizing a percentage.
So, and I'm sure this is not a one size fits all answer, but what agreement values, so in other words, minimums, should I be looking at in terms of looking at my margin? Because I don't want to be looking at somebody that pays me to host a website for $25. I probably don't even care about that one.
To me, it would be traditional managed services, right? You're all you can eat. So, right, if sometimes you have some costs like AV endpoints and RMM endpoints, right? Those are cogs that are necessary for managed services. So for me, right, this is people that are paying me an all you can eat controllable margin, to where I can look at, should I be doing more efficiencies or less efficiencies for that client, and it's indicative of what their profitability is. Now, if you're service manager and you're doing this regularly, it quite possibly could be that, right, the client needs to pay more money, charge more, do less. but you really should only do the charge more when you're really there saying, hey, we've done everything we can to make this client profitable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can pull it out too in this report, say, I just want to see agreement values over a certain amount. If you wanted to just focus on, sometimes getting out those friend clients that you set up at $300 or whatever it might be, and kind of take them out of there. I think there was another question that came through, Aaron, that I saw on
about contribution rate.
Contribution rate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the difference there is with effective rate. Basically, what you're going to do is take your amount billed. We're going to take out the additions costs and say, okay, total billed, and then it's just a math problem to say what your labor hours were for the total amount to build less addition. For contribution rate, we're actually going to take the employee or the member cost as well. So it's not just the hours. It's gonna have the cost in there to let you see what that true amount that you're making per hour on that client with the cost added in as well. So the way I look at it is, if I were managing or pushing this out to my company, effective rate is a really good one to use to be able to give to your team. Contribution rate is a great one to look at from a management level. This is what I'm making from a management level. It's, you might, I know I've been guilty of this in the past, grandfathering in engineers that had an increase in salary or increase in pay. And it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to let them keep taking care of this client. You put that contribution rate in there and they're making $100,000 and you could have an engineer on there that's making 50. It's going to really show in that contribution rate. And
that's a beautiful example, Christy, of the do less, right? Charge more, do less is one way you can do that is, right? Best, again, going back to maturity of an MSP, right? Why is that tier 1 not doing the 20-hour ticket versus the tier 3?
Exactly. Do I need to push this? Or if you're looking at a ticket with a lot of time, why hasn't that been escalated to a tier 3 to be able to push that 10 hours to 1 hour?
Totally. Yeah, it goes either way.
Yeah.
Last question is, once I've identified my bottom 5, where do I start? I guess, what's the next step in solving those problems?
Fantastic.
I guess it's looking at the data some more.
That's where I think that the power of Cognition360 of deep diving that client. So looking at the timesheets, looking at, partnering with a tier 3 to that client saying, hey, should we reconfigure the server? Should we sell the client 365 migration, right? Are there commonalities in the requests that the client has been making month to month that are indicative of where we can save time? Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is save time and costs. Yeah. Now, and that's where really diving into the deep, and I think you're going to show the work types and using you can even do, I think, Christy, ticket types, right? For that client for the last couple months to say, hey, maybe Susie at the front desk, she calls every time she wants a cup of coffee made and she opens the ticket and we're running over there and making her a cup of coffee. Well, we could find out that single user is causing that conversation, which allows then your account managers to have that QBR or a monthly review with the client to say, hey, Mr. Client, can we talk about Susie? Because I'm about to charge you 3 times more money because she wants us to make coffee every day for her.
And really, the way to stay on top of all of them is an account management process. If you have an account management process and you've built it out to where you know that you want everything to be in that 150 effective rate or higher, your account managers are KPI'd on top of that to look at those numbers. They're also, they're incentivized based on those QBRs. Are they having the QBRs or TBRs or however it is that's laid out for you? The main thing is to have a process that it's being looked at. The projects come out of that. You find out if there's CSAT issues. You don't have somebody just leave you. For me, if you have a customer that you're losing money on, I would start with this work type cost report. It's a finance report. You would put in the client that you wanted, and then it could take it down for you to let you see where is my time being spent. And then you could go drill down into this, look at it from a remote hour standpoint, look at it across 6 months, look at it, really drill into how much is this costing me to take care of this customer. And then another one that Kyle talked about, this common issue. So if you've got good type, subtype, and item data, which I recommend, you can take it down from, and we can give you from a resource cost standpoint, but also down to how much is it costing you to serve that client. If I click on the client, it's going to also show me down to your type, subtype, and item, where are you spending your money? What is causing me to spend so much money on this client? Is there anything we can get rid of? Is there a project that we need to work on? Why do we have $1,600 in printer subtypes for this particular client?
Buy them a new printer on your behalf at that point.
Exactly. And then you drill into it that way, to really deep dive to find out, why are we losing money on them?
Funny story. I've actually had to do that, where you find out it's that one printer and the client they didn't want to replace it. And I said, Mr. Client, I'm going to buy it for you at this point because I'm about to fire you. I remember having that conversation with the CEO, and it was funny because buying that printer basically made me hand over fist the next year.
Yeah. I was looking at that common issue report one time, and there was a client. I typed in, because you can type in just free form text in the subject summary field, and I just typed in password. And over a 1 month period, they had $3,000 in password resets cost. I'm like, well, there's a project for you,
Right.
or a change to their password rules. And the help desk just gets busy, especially the more you grow. Your help desk gets busy. They're supposed to be working. They're supposed to be knocking out tickets. That's what they're supposed to do. So sometimes it's hard for them to be able to say, like, they can say they're busy and I'm stressed out, but they can't really tell you why. What is the reason for this blow up on this particular day? And being able to have the reporting and analytics to be able to get to the bottom of it fast with clicks of buttons, it's hard to do just out of ConnectWise data.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Well, that's all the questions we got. Again, if you've got questions, you can reach out to Christy or Kyle. I've got their info up on the screen now. And also, we'll be at IT Nation, so we'll see you there if you're coming. We'll be in the pavilion, the booth area, and then a couple of speaking slots we've got there as well, and then throughout the halls. Looking forward to it, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Can't look forward to buying you guys a beer.
I'll let you buy me one, Kyle.
I owe you a few.